Hello, I'm Pattern Tusk. I've been sharing music under this name for sort of the last 5-6 years. And I wanted to tell a little bit about that story and what it's been like for me so far. I've been into music from a young age. I was playing instruments when I was young and playing in bands and my uncle's band and things like that. I was absolutely fascinated by recording and I'd sit for hours and hours just playing guitar on my bed, and spent my teens going to see bands, mostly rock bands, indie bands, alternative bands, and I was doing all that with my best mate Dan. But that was my trajectory. I always thought I'd be in a band, I always thought I'd be playing instruments, and I still do. It's a real love of mine. So that was what I expected my path to be in many ways. I was fully focused on that sound and playing guitar and recording and writing music. I grew up with a little bit of a I wasn't interested in electronic music, really. It wasn't until my later teens. And my brother is a couple of years older than me, and he's always loved music as well. And he's a very sociable guy, and he was throwing parties and things like this. This is when he was in school, you know, it was when he was young. And I would see him sitting together making little playlists and things like this, and collecting music, trying to create the perfect playlist for the guests that he had come in, all his mates and the different crowds of people that would come. So he did have decks, just a little controller and stuff like that, and I never showed any interest in it. For me, I was like, nah, put me on my bed with a guitar and I'm happy, you know, kind of learn some blues. It wasn't until I sort of got to 15, 16, me and my mate Dan, we did start going to see more electronic acts like Fortet, and there was this sort of crossover happening as we was getting a little bit older. But my brother carried on doing his DJing and throwing these little events, and it was getting kind of known just locally, just for his social character of inviting people around and having parties, and he was good at it, you know, because it was a natural thing for him, like creating a nice night. So he was doing more and more mixing and DJing and collecting music, which led to him meeting a bunch of guys that you think he knew anyway, but the connection through music started to happen, and then it was these guys that ended up having a really big impact on my crossover into this sound and what I've spent the last sort of 5-6 years doing quite consistently. And it was a bit of a right-hand turn, you know. Anyone that knew me at the time would not have expected that these years for me would have been spent making electronic dance music, because, as I said, everyone knew that my character was sitting on my bed playing guitar and recording guitars and being in bands and playing in bands and doing that sort of thing. But my brother always included me. I'm very close to my brother. He always included me into his plans, and I'm very grateful for him for being like that and wanting me to be there along for the ride. So I was a couple of years younger than him, just watching everything that was going on and realising that there was a real nice scene bubbling away. These young guys, these young DJs that absolutely loved the music, and it was through them that I, in a way, got a sort of bit of a shortcut, because it's not like I started finding house music and was listening to all the commercial stuff that then led me down the road to this sort of fine niche of really finding what I like. It was kind of like straight into the at the time, quite Romanian minimal dance music. So my brother ended up becoming really good mates with these guys. Through that, they ended up becoming my friends, and I was going to these events that they were doing. They were throwing parties. They had an event called Signum London, and their thing was these free parties that they were throwing in the woods in Essex, where we grew up. And it was like this scene that I'd never even knew existed, you know, or at least had not been an interest of mine to dive into that sort of stuff and go along for the ride. And I've got so many stories, and the guys I'm talking about would do as well, you know, so I can't go into it all. But amazing times, absolutely amazing times. But I'd be standing at the back of these wood raves or at the front and watching the guys mix, and at the start they started really small, and then before you know it, they was getting quite big, you know, a lot of people coming down and to experience these parties. And I was just in awe. I was listening to this sound that was completely new to me, that I had, up until that point, I had no interest in, and that I was probably now 16 it started, and especially when I got to sort of like 17, it really started becoming a love with mine. I sort of become fascinated with it overnight. Like, what is it that I love so much about this sound? It's super minimal. I didn't know anything about the music. I didn't know who had made the music. Most of it was all vinyl and records. So just by being with them and seeing their love of this sound that they were showing me just from me being around. They probably didn't realise at the time how much my little mind was going off and piecing all the puzzles together of this fascination of this scene. But I was there and ears wide open and watching and picking things up and realising what it was all about, or trying to figure out what it was all about. So just by being with them, I was learning to mix records. My brother by then had a set up of Technics and things like that. So just us generally socialising with that crowd at the time, that was what you do. You know, you're sort of in a group of 12 DJs, all of them absolutely love collecting records and digging records. It was a bit of a fight to be on the decks and who's going to be next, you know. So I'd let them do their thing. I wasn't going to be the 13th man to try and jump in, but of course over the years that does happen. You end up putting a record on or mixing a track in, and when I was on my own, this love has started to really grow in me, and as I said, it was a real like a right hand turn. You know, it was, you know, in many ways overnight, by going to these free parties in the woodlands, and there was such an edge and a youth to it that was an underlining energy that really captivated where I was at in that time, you know, of like being young and feeling young, and all this new stuff was happening for the first time, and I was around it, being exposed to it. But the music grabbed me, it really did, and that mystery behind where the music was coming from and who was making it was something that instantly I knew I wanted to tap into. And even though it can be completely different to what I'd been enjoying and making up until that point, I was then going home and after these parties full of inspiration to try and figure out what made the music. These guys know who they are, by the way. They had a very big impact. If it wasn't for my brother and then me meeting Signum guys, and they're all very, very good friends of mine. I've got so much love for them. They know who they are. Kurt, Whitey, Rich, Pierce. They were great times, and I'm very fond of those memories of being in these parties and experiencing this scene that I know maybe I would have found, but it would have been years after. If I definitely had a shortcut being exposed to it at 16, 17, and also just the party scene, you know, completely different to going to a gig and standing there and watching a live band play. And from that moment on, it felt like this quest was born for me to figure out what it was, because I'd go home after these parties, start making music, and I'd be topped up of love and inspiration from the nights that we were having. But I couldn't make the music. Every track I'd done was real poor quality, and I'd listen back, and even though I loved it, I'd listen back and I'm thinking, there's some sort of formula here that these guys, these producers that I have no idea who they are and where the music's coming from are doing. There's like a whole different set of rules, it felt like at the time. Then become this quest to figure that out, like what it was that was making me love this music so much, and everyone else that was in these parties absolutely jive all night, and becoming this flow, you know. It was a whole different thing of like pure euphoria. I was sober most of the time as well, you know. I've never been a drinker, so I had like this very honest experience of the vibe, and these nights that were just absolutely incredible. You just feel like, wow, this is like there's not a care in the world whilst I'm in these places. And I'm so pleased that these events and parties were what I was spending my time doing back then, you know. It was a real youthful energy of this underlining edge, as I said, that you didn't know if it was going to go wrong at any moment, but it didn't. It was just beautifully crafted all the way throughout, and that's credit to the boys. You know, the boys that I'm talking about, that they knew what they were doing, and they managed to capture a vibe. The Woods parties ended up getting bigger and bigger to the point where it was quite overwhelming how small they started and how big that they got. But that's not my story to tell. Maybe they'll do that one day. Hopefully they do. It could be a film. It's one of those ones where if someone said to me, have you got an idea for a film? I'd go to those guys and say, guys, produce a film about these days that you've done, because I was just in many ways a tag along, you know. I was just there as one of the younger brothers, watching these guys do what they were doing. Really exciting times, really cool. So overnight, my interest changed massively. You know, I was now in college and these parties were happening. I'm now in and out of London. And when I was 17, the first party I went to that wasn't one of these Woodlands parties, one of these free parties, was Half Baked. Raresh was playing. It was August, a beautiful evening in London. I was one of the first in the queue. I was thinking I might not get in here. So I knew I wasn't meant to be there, but I thought, all right, let's try my luck. You know, I'm going along. If I don't get in, it's not a problem. Well, then I was in, and I walked in. I thought, wow, this is cool. Went straight to the bar. I think I got myself a lemonade. But that night, as I just said, Raresh was playing, and that was a game changer for me. Seeing someone like that at the time, I'd never seen him before, but seeing him, he was like a kid in a candy store. And you guys know, seeing Raresh play, you know, he's a real special and it was one of those nights like eyes shut, hands up, everyone was just on a vibe, and it kind of blew me away a bit. And also seeing someone have so much fun mixing these records on this like big mixer. Some of you might even know what mixer that was, because I haven't actually seen him play on that before. I'm not sure if it's a bit of a staple of the Half-Baked guys delivering in that mixer for a special night, but it really was special, and I will never forget that. That was like if I needed any more convincing or needed showing anything more about this scene, it was that night. Me at 17 in Hackney, seeing Raresh play, you know. And again, the mystery, seeing him put down these records, and the mystery, not knowing like who was making them, where this music's coming from, because I knew absolutely nothing. And that was very much where silently I knew that I was going to try and figure this out and put some energy and time into this sound of music, and enjoy this sound of music, enjoy making this sound of music. But I've always been one of those characters that sort of just does, I knew that in my mind, but I didn't tell any of my mates or any of the guys, you know. I'd just go home and start chipping away, and I was in this mode of, I'd make one, it was really bad. Yeah, I was addicted in the sense that straight away I was starting another one, and then another one, and another one. And just the idea of the next one being different or even slightly better than the one before was all I needed, you know. And this is where it felt like a quest. It didn't take me much. I wasn't even thinking about, I'm spending all this time doing music. I was just in it there. I've not been one of these guys that got into music production and their first track was already really good. My journey's not been like that. I listen to people's first tracks these days and I'm just like, wow, that's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. There I was, sound by sound, layering things up, and the mixes being really, really poor. And as soon as I'd listen to them outside the room I was making them in, they was terrible. I just had no idea what I was doing, but absolutely loving it. And each party that I went to, it was like I'd worked out a tiny little bit more of the puzzle that was piecing together me understanding more and more of this world and this sound. This fascination with this new sound was everything I wanted to do. So the band that I was in at the time with my best mate Dan, he was also becoming aware that I'd found this scene. I was going to these underground parties and watching now live acts and people like Mandar and stuff like that absolutely blew my mind at the time, seeing them play on synthesizers. And both of our love of synthesizers by that point had grown. The hybrid had already started coming together of not just vocals and guitars and keyboards, but yeah, synthesizers and drum machines and stuff like that. So we'd been collecting equipment for some years by then anyway, but that change in inspiration from seeing this different world and also getting into the electronic side of things and what different equipment there is out there that you can play around on sort of changed both of our course. And it was around this time that we started doing little dance live sets in our room together. We'd set up all the equipment as we always did do, but this time it was making sort of kind of minimal music. And because our mates were throwing the parties and we was sort of amongst this little scene that was bubbling away, and we were the young ones out of the group. Most of these guys are sort of 2, 3, sometimes even 4 years older than us, who I was socialising with, and through me socialising with them, my best mate was as well. You know, we all sort of started to come together. Next minute, we've got a new project. We've decided to call it Lily Estate. I'll talk about that a little bit later on, because we still do that project together today. But that was the birth of it. You know, doing live sets, and we'd go into the clubs with all our equipment, set it all up. We was completely throwing ourselves into the deep end. Like really, we had absolutely no idea what we were doing, but it was good. It was good for us. When I look back now, I'm grateful that we've done that, because if I knew what I knew now, we probably wouldn't have done it, because I'd realise how out of our depth we were. Very easy to get stuck in a loop, and the early sets, there was not even really much prep done. You know, we would just create on the spot and try and make sure that the loop was moving and evolving, and then before you know it, you're into something else, and it was just a constant movement. So that was good for us, both of us, of learning and getting used to throwing yourself into the deep end and just doing it, you know. So they were great times. At that point, most of my days were still making music with him and other guys on different sounds. It wasn't just the electronic sound. So really, it was only on a Saturday or a Sunday when everyone else was busy that I would be able to pull up Ableton and start making some tracks that were for the Pattern Tusk project, you know. And at that point, I really wanted to see what I could create and where the music would land without anyone knowing who I was, my age, my face, and all that. And I think that come off of my teenage years of being someone that done music, and it's lovely that your friends support and they're there and they show interest. But I was kind of wanting that. I was ready for that sort of real authentic feedback, and the scene lent itself to it because there was a lot of mystery at that time, at least for me, in it. So as I said, a lot of the time I didn't know even who was making the music until I went home and started going down more of the scene and realising who were kind of key people within it. So that's why I started Pattern Tusk as a project. I wanted no face to it at that time. I didn't want anyone to know my age and know who I was, just so that I could maybe start putting tracks out there and seeing where they landed. And my first track's a track called Palms. It's actually still online. It's not a good track at all. It's very raw, but I made it, and it quickly, I think in the first week of me making it, I've only probably spent a day or two, maybe like a few hours each day or two on it, and not even that. I don't even know how long I spent on it. If I listen back now, there's hardly anything in the track. Super minimal, quite chunky. But Roscoe ended up playing that at ADE, and another guy at Fabric, I was getting a message, he was playing it at Fabric, and I wasn't even old enough to go Fabric. I wasn't even old enough to go ADE, and I was like, no way. Like, for the first time, I'm actually sharing a piece of music that no one knows who I am, and it's getting played at these festivals and in clubs and stuff I'm not even old enough to be in. So that was kind of even more of an inspiration of thinking, wow, I want to keep doing this, because I know the next one's going to be better and the next one's going to be better. Turner, one of the guys that run the Signum party, close friend of ours, he was actually at ADE, and a video come through. I remember going to bed and the video coming through the next day of Roscoe playing the track. I might even still have it. I'll put it up on the screen if I have got it, but and that was excellent, for me at that point, knowing that the music weren't up to scratch, because it weren't up to scratch. There was maybe some raw creativity in it that clearly sparked the ears of these guys that did actually play it, but listening back, it wasn't there at all. So, and I knew that, but for me to be able to hear these tracks on these sound systems would have been a game change, because straight away I would have learned a lot from that. Any of you guys know, if you hear your music on a sound system, especially for the first time, you were either very pleased with it, how it's sounding exactly how you want it to, or normally it's the complete other way. And I went through that process. It was a long journey, and those early years were that all over, I was just like, wow, I make a track, it sounds great, and then when you hear it on these big sound systems, it was not there at all, and some of my mates started playing the tracks, and it was perfect for me to stand on these dance floors and hear a piece of music of mine. But that feeling, in a way, it's a bit of dread, you think, it's not sounding good, it's not ready. And I knew I weren't ready, but it just fueled this fascination of like, what am I missing? What am I not doing? This production style and the mixing, but not only that, the groove and figuring out what it was that I was lacking in these productions, But having that little bit of insight of like, I've wondered, standing at the back of these parties, I was just wondering, I wonder if I can get my music played by these sorts of DJs and in this sort of caliber of party. That was sort of like the mission that I felt inside, and that was also what I didn't tell anyone else. I didn't feel the need to tell anyone else of like, one day I'm going to try and get my music played here. I was like, no, I'm just going to go home. I had a lot of work to do. I was going to go home and keep enjoying making this music, not force it, because at the time I was generally just enjoying it. What I wanted to spend my time doing was making this music. So I look back now at how many hours I actually spent doing it. As I said, it wasn't a quick unraveling for me. It's been consistency of each track maybe getting 0.05% better, and in that time and by having that mindset, I've made hundreds. I never really got stuck on finishing a track. I would finish it. I kind of knew that if I don't do that last 5% of a track, then I'm never going to get good at that last 5% of a track or whatever. So I've never had trouble finishing music or getting to the point where I think, this is as good as I can get it. This idea, for where I'm at right now, this idea is as good as I can get it, and maybe I could spend weeks and months and maybe even years trying to make it better, and I would have made it better if I had that mindset, but I didn't. I was like, right, that's done for now. Put it to the side, start another one. Put it to the side, start another one. And that's how I kind of slowly started learning my sound and my ways of doing things. Now, fast forward, so when I'm about 19, 20, I ended up moving away from London and Essex and moved to the countryside. It was kind of a big move, because I'm moving away from the scene and the scene that I'd been enjoying, even though I was kind of ready to. I didn't feel like I wanted to be in London and in these parties even more, even though that my love for the music hadn't changed. But I was also taking myself away from the friends I was making music with, you know, the guys that I'd been making music with all the way through school, and especially my best mate Dan. It was kind of a big thing. It was a big change in our week and what we'd been spending our time doing, because I was no longer going to be up the road available to do sessions every day and record and build the projects that we were working on at the time. I sort of knew deep down that we'd carry on making music. I couldn't promise that at the time, because it was like, yeah, well, you're moving 3-4 hours away. Of course it's going to be different, and it has been different. I'm pleased to say that we have maintained it. We've actually got a record coming out very soon, and we had our debut record out last year on our own label as well, State of Play, Octo EP. I have great fun making that project. Some of my favourite tracks, some of my most proudest work is those tracks, and some of the ones we've got coming out soon, so keep an eye out for that. So now I'm in this town away from the scene, not going to any parties. It's actually collided with all the madness that kicked off in 2020 as well, so there wasn't much to do. I was in this new place, I didn't know anyone, and that was the first time that I could actually work on the Pattern Tusk project and the Pattern Tusk sound as much as I wanted every day. I didn't have other people around me that were up for doing sessions and things like that. So in 2020, that's what I'd done in that time. I first started putting some tracks onto Bandcamp and chipping away at the music. I'd already had one release in 2019 on Zendala Records and 3 tracks. It was funny with that release, just quickly, that release, it was getting closer and closer to the release date, and I'm thinking, I started fearing, the music's not ready, It got a little bit of support, it done okay. Yuli B played it in a podcast, which again was a great bit of confidence boost. So now I'm in the countryside, away from the scene, away from all the people I'd been making music with up until that point, and I had all the time in the world just to figure out what I wanted the project to be and the sound, and improve my mixes. There was a lot of emphasis on that at the time, of trying to get my mixes to be clear and balanced and gain confidence in that they're going to sit well on these sound systems that I wanted them to be played on. At least at the quality, a good enough standard to be played on those sorts of systems and delivered to the DJs who were playing them what they wanted. I had an EP scheduled in with Zendala Records. It was 3 tracks with a remix, and a couple of months before it was due to release, Primary, who runs the label, messaged me and he said, "Bro, I want to make this release as good as it can be. Are you sitting on any more tracks?" I sent him what I had. It was about 10 or 12 tracks at the time, and to my surprise, I wasn't expecting it at all. He said, "Let's make this an album." So the EP turned into an album. I went from releasing 3 tracks to 10 or 12, and it was my debut album, a big body of work to share at that stage for me, because, as I said, I was very much focusing on improving, and that came at a time where I was ready to put stuff out. I felt ready. I was looking forward to sharing, and being on Zendala was great for me. I was really grateful to be given the opportunity. So for it to turn into a 12-track album was kind of a big moment for me. I called the album Moment to Realise. You can go and check it out. It's a certain style, and it very much captures what that period was for me in terms of sound, and and the year that followed, and that time for me, the 2021-2022, it was a particular sound for me that many call the authentic pattern. I had that comment recently. I reshared a track from that time a couple of weeks ago, and someone said the authentic pattern, and it's just funny, because I feel like I've moved on from that period of time, which I'll get onto why in a moment. But you never know where the music's landing, you never know who's hearing it and really enjoying it, and of course others it won't be a bit of them at all, but that's fine, it's all subjective. So the mixes at that point were much cleaner, and I was happy with that, and that album went on to have release support from people like Marco Carola, played it at Sunwaves, and so we've done well. That was sort of like some big moves for me at the time, to sort of see that caliber of DJ playing the music that I was making in my bedroom. Off the back of that album, that was the most I'd laid out there, and it was sort of the start of people becoming aware of the name. I think I was getting more and more labels reaching out for me to join them for releases. It started this period of me being really busy, and I was saying yes to everything. I was like, oh wow, these guys want me to be on a release, I'm going to do it. And another one, I'll do that as well. But it got to this period in 2021, 2022, I'd been saying yes to everything. And I had all these tracks, like a crazy amount of tracks that were due to be released. I'm talking like maybe 30, 40 tracks that I was that were going here, there and everywhere. Way too many. And the good thing about that period of time was I was getting a lot of exposure because I was collaborating with all these different brands and people, labels, networking through it, and meeting new producers that are on a similar stage to me. And I was then getting sent music that I hadn't been getting sent before. So it was good in many, many ways. But the downside to it was that I was producing quantity over quality. Yeah, so in many ways I was improving because I was doing so much and finishing tracks. I was going through a lot of each time they were getting slightly better. I was managing to explore different avenues within it, but it definitely was too much, and it was definitely quantity over quality. So when I looked, it got to the end of sort of 2022. I'd shared loads of music at that point, but what I took from it was I got to learn to say no. I got to learn to say no for the benefit of the listener, for the benefit of me working on my craft and trying to improve the productions. I'd got it to the point where I looked back on that wave of music that I was making. I thought, right, cool, yeah, at least I know that it's clean and it's balanced and it's being played on these stages now, on these sound systems, it's good. But when I would listen, it had lost its soul. I was in many ways butchering the mixes the other way, getting them so clean that essence, that rawness that's there when you're jamming a track or you're coming up with an idea, I was losing it through doing too much and trying to get the sound so clean that, to me, that period sounded the opposite of timeless, you know, of a track that was so clean it had kind of had nothing about it. This is me critiquing. As I said, some people really enjoyed that period of Pattern Tusk and sort of talked to me that way. They want to do more of that sound you was doing back then. But we evolve as artists. I think it's natural. You're always sort of looking of where you want to go next, and of course inspiration's changed as well, and you sort of always taking steps forward. So it's a natural process, but that's what I took away from that period. It was really good to have that exposure and meet so many people and expand the network and be getting opportunities to release music. But it taught me a lot of lessons that I need to go back and start saying no to what comes in and go back a few steps. And I've now got the tracks clean. I can reel it back a bit. Was what I took away. This started the 2023 period. Going into 2023, I made a decision just to release on my own Bandcamp, really cement this saying no to these different releases and do EPs on my own Bandcamp. And that's when I started the Roof for the Rain series. I think I've done like 5 or 6 EPs under that. For those of you that know, it's the artwork that's got the different colour trees on it. It's on my Bandcamp. And that was sort of me cementing, focus on your Bandcamp. Less is more. Start getting some maturity. Start maturing the sound. That was the big thing, mature the sound. This is when things really started to change for me, and I noticed me getting closer to filling out what felt like the quest that I'd mentioned when I was 16, 17. I launched the Zendala record label, my record label, at the start of 2023, and that was kind of a big thing, a couple of years in the making for me to feel like it was time, and I was ready to do that. I also knew I was going to learn a lot through doing that, and even just mixing your tracks to go on a vinyl is different to what I'd done up until that point. So it was good. I was pleased I made that jump and took that risk and released the record label, which later turned into an event last year. This was really the turning point. Me saying no to the opportunities and getting used to saying no and feeling okay with saying no allowed me to really mature the music, and launching the record label and everything else was now I can see was a bit of a turning point. Barack, who's one of my favourite producers, one of the ones that really got me into the whole scene at the start, started heavily supporting Ever Change B1 of the record, which was amazing for me, waking up and seeing these videos of Barack playing them in his sets, getting a good reaction. I was like, that's it, that's what I wondered if I could do, you know, these sorts of guys in these sort of caliber of parties playing the music. So 2023 was all about being stricter for me, you know, like really focusing on being stricter with what made it into the track, the actual elements that I was putting into the track. If it really wasn't doing its job, it would go, which is such a basic fundamental, but I wasn't doing that, you know. It was a big thing for me, overcrowding the music, making it way too complicated than it needed to be. Less is more, but the little that's in there has got to be working, you know. And that was when I was really being strict with that mindset in making my music, and it really switched things up for me. and the tones of the sounds that I was now using were different. You know, there was to me sounding more raw and more old school, and I was striving for that sound that to me sounds a little bit more timeless. What followed was a reflection of that. You know, that time that I took away to say no and be strict with myself and really dive in had a big thing for me, because it really got me closer to achieving what I always wondered if I could achieve, which was to get my music on these dance floors that I always wondered and deep down kind of knew that there was a journey there to achieve, and I done it. So that's what followed. Barack playing the tracks and seeing all these videos of dance floors all over the world being dancing to my music, and in parties that I once stood in, you know, parties that I was going to with my friends, and seeing these DJs, and the ones where I was just ears all wide open, taking it all in and learning and piecing together the puzzle. That started to happen for me in 2023 by being stricter and by really diving into maturing the music, maturing the sound. Last year, 2024, was when the support really sort of took off in terms of this thing. I'm not saying crazy support, but the DJs that I really like and that got me into the scene, the music that got me into the love of this scene and the love of this music, and those people I was going out to see play music were now playing my music. Last year, this started to happen more and more of me seeing more and more videos of going on Instagram and scrolling and seeing a video on a page that I'd always followed ever since the start, but now it's my track. And not only is it my track, it's being played by some of these dream guys for me, you know, that set a certain standard. And it's been kind of like this full circle moment, and I felt that at the start of this year, 2025, off the back of last year, you know, of Raresh playing the tracks with back-to-back RPR, like when he's playing with RPR and Delgado and Brasley, all these guys, you know, my favourites who at least got me into it at the start when I was 16, 17. My music was now in their sets, and it's been a journey, you know. It took me that time of slowly chipping away, and not achieving it overnight meant that meant more, you know. And what's interesting is you just take it all in your stride. I've never really had that moment of like, that's cool, it's sort of like on to the next, and not expecting it, but I also know the work that I've done and the hours I've put in enjoying the music. So the evolution of improving is inevitable, right? It's going to happen when you spend years doing something and that many hours doing something. These things slowly get closer, and then they're happening, and there's no real kind of celebration for me, you know. It's I'm in the countryside still, watching from afar, having loved the music and still love making the music. But starting this year, 2025, having had that sort of peak last year, and a couple of gigs coming off of it, and launching the Zendala Records as also an event, and doing New Year's Eve and everything like that. I sort of started this year thinking like, kind of wow, like the quest in many ways has been completed. If I just think about the goals that I set myself deep down inside and like internally at that young age of 16, 17 at the back of these dance floors, kind of sort of come full circle last year. I think that's why I'm in this reflective stage right now of thinking about the journey and seeing it for what it is, going through all these little chapters within it, and the different turning points of when you do something consistently, but also something that you love and that brings you so much joy, and that you don't have to force because it's what you enjoy doing in your downtime when you've got spare time. How do you spend your time? And for me, over these last 5-6 years, it's been that, making underground house music and finding my sound within it. So it leads me up to today, really, or at least this year, 2025, feels like a full circle moment where I'm sort of reflecting, because I'm like, right, okay, what do I want to do next? I'm always going to be able to improve the music and enjoy working on the music, because that's a never-ending thing as an artist or whoever, you know. You can always work on your craft, and it's not that I've cracked it by any means, you know. Inspirations change, and the standard of music these days is amazing. So it's not in the sense that I've done it, but what I have achieved is that thing I wanted if I could when I was younger. I think that's why I'm now at this point. I'm like, okay, wow, that's that, you know. I now know what it's like to do something consistently and be disciplined without even knowing you're being disciplined. It helps when you're almost fascinated by it, so you're doing it without realizing it. But that's what's come full circle, you know, is that quest. That quest has in many ways been achieved, And now we'll see what's next for me within music, within everything, because things are branching out now and I see the horizons being differently, and I always do come back to this sound though, you know. It's a love of mine that I'm so grateful that I discovered and have found myself a part of in some very small way, seeing my music being played by not just DJs that I really admire, but anyone, you know, seeing a video of people having fun and dancing and having good times with their friends, like I was at the back end of my teens, which is now 10 years ago. This is what's crazy. It all kind of ties in that I'm sitting here now telling the story, or feeling like I want to tell the story for maybe even just my future self to look back on, but maybe someone here watching might be able to relate or learn from or anything, you know. It's fascinating. I think it's good to reflect. I think it's very natural to reflect, and as I said, otherwise there's no real celebration. You sort of just keep on to the next thing without actually stopping and taking a look back at what the journey's been. And this is in any field of life, right? But for me, it's been this project and this sound of starting from being so far away from it and the mystery within it and not knowing what it is and being gripped by it, to then slowly over the years tapping away at it to getting to a point where I think, okay, that mystery I now sort of know a little bit more, and I've managed to walk through on that path and tick off some of the things that I wanted to tick off that I never knew if I could, but kind of deep down I knew that I would, if that makes sense. But that's just consistency, right? It's whatever you do in life, it's just being consistent. If you love it and it's something you really want, I now know what it's like to take those little steps to getting closer to it. And still, every track I make, I want it to be a little bit different or learn from something and improve it. And that's the artist way, I suppose. And any artist in any arts, I think, is on that journey, because I know the power in setting a goal, even if you don't speak it out loud, but you speak it to yourself and you can feel it deep down. I know the power in that and following that, and you can tick things off and much bigger than what this story is. You know, anything you're thinking that you can do, just that consistency, a bit of discipline, and having a love for something really goes a long way. And I'm grateful for that.